In today's video, we have two killers in an alley in the early hours of the morning, waiting for a victim to pass. Any victim to brutally kill. Police would stumble on the body and the killers purely by accident. We look into the case, the police investigation, and the trial. We go to Bradford Road, Fartown, Huddersfield, June the 19th, 2022. At about 1:30 a.m, 53-year-old Paul Early was making his way back from a friend's house on Halifax Road, after an evening out at the pub with some friends. It was about over a mile walk back to his house. As he walked down Halifax Road, the road then hits the junction of the A461, also known as Bradford Road. Bradford Road is a row of shops that range from fast food takeaways to restaurants, but between these businesses, there's a shop, an empty premises, number 117. Looking out from the alleyway of the premises were two men, watching and waiting for a victim, any victim. As Paul Early passes 117, the two men came out of the alley. They were Sanchez Francis, 24 years old, and Kieran Doherty, 19 years old. The alley they'd come out of led to the property where Kieran Doherty lived. The two men rushed out and attacked Paul Early. After several blows to the face, Paul Early was then stabbed. As he fell to the ground, the two men dragged Paul Early through the alley and slammed the door shut. Paul Early was dragged down to the alley into the premises, where Paul Early was repeatedly stabbed, kicked and beaten to death. The two men dragged his body down to the cellar of the building, where Paul Early's body was hidden behind some old rubbish and furniture. How much was taken from Paul Early was not known, but he had left his bank cards at home and just taken cash out that evening. So who is the victim, Paul Early? Paul Early had been an addict for well over 30 years. He's no stranger to the police, with 161 convictions. His last was in 2017, when Paul Early and his mate were grabbing, their words for shoplifting, and nicked £73 worth of booze. Paul Early made the newspapers in 2014 for nicking 91 chocolate bars worth £119. And 3 days before, from the same shop, he stole £158 worth of meat. This he would sell to buy H. A police officer noticed Paul Early, who tried to avoid the officer. That was when he was stopped and searched, and was found with a large amount of chocolate bars. For this he was given jail time of 6 months and put on a programme, but started shoplifting and using as soon as he was out. In 2017, Paul Early was put on a programme and given an injection, a blocker, where the junk, if he took it, it would have no effect on him and get him clean, instead of prison time. This seemed to work, but with 30 years of being an addict, getting clean caused other problems. What he was using was covering a series of health problems. The junk was killing him. Paul Early done a good job in becoming clean. He replaced the junk with exercise and began rebuilding his life, from working in a charity shop to then working as a car valeter. He had his own house, and any spare time when he wasn't working, he would spend walking. He turned his life around and expressed regret at the life he once lived. He had new work friends and would spend weekend nights out at the pub. This is where he was walking back from, heading home after a night out, before he was brutally murdered. Police in Huddersfield were investigating two robberies, muggings that had taken place. The robberies had involved two perpetrators. From CCTV, they had managed to track one of the robbers to a shop about an hour before one of the attacks, and before the pair met up. Kieran Doherty was identified. A police unit was sent to 117 Bradford Road, where Kieran Doherty opened the door to a police officer. Kieran Doherty was arrested and a police officer searched the address. The police officer then went downstairs to the basement, where he searched the area and made the horrific discovery. Kieran Doherty was then arrested on suspicion of murder. Sanchez Francis was identified as a person of interest. He could not be located at his address, Police launched a large operation with forensic units and examining CCTV. And it was then when police seen on camera the victim being attacked by two men, then dragged off the street down an alley where the gate is slammed shut. The CCTV footage lasted about a minute. Sanchez Francis was laid to court, and he and Kieran Doherty were charged with murder and 2 previous robberies and remanded into custody. In Leeds Crown Court, 24th of July 2024, the murder trial took place. In court, no reason or defence was given for the barbaric murder. A senior investigating officer in the case said Paul Early was the victim of horrific assault by these men, who committed a final indignity on him by attempting to conceal his body. The level of violence they inflicted on Paul Early was the worst I have seen in my policing career. Suspects used excessive violence to cause significant injuries to Paul, and then used a bladed weapon to inflict multiple stab wounds on him. The attack on Paul was made all the worse by him clearly being selected at the pair by random. Paul was merely walking around the area when he was spotted by the pair. Sanchez Francis was sentenced to life in prison. He was told he would serve a minimum term of 21 years. Kieran Doherty was sentenced to life in prison, and he must serve a minimum term of 17.5 years. DCI Matthew Holdsworth said after sentencing, "There is no doubt that both of these males are dangerous individuals, as further evidenced by the totality of their offending. We hope seeing them sentenced will bring some comfort to Paul's relatives and friends and allow the victims of the robberies to know other people will not be subjected to the same ordeal they were." Paul Early was picked at random. I mean, that is something, picked at random. It could have been anyone walking past, and they would have suffered the same fate. Little is known of Kieran Doherty and Sanchez Francis, but to kill without any remorse and still have the body where you live. Police believe this was a start, and they got caught early. How many more people would have lost their lives? Paul Early had turned his life around. Though pushed into it instead of doing jail time, he broke the chains of his crippling addiction. Years would pass only to have his life taken by 2 men looking for a victim, any victim, that night. Paul Early unfortunately walked past that address, and then they attacked. Not finished, they then dragged him through the alley and took his life and thrown him behind rubbish in an old cellar. Reading the details, it plays like a penny dreadful, the old true crime Victorian newspapers that of course cost a penny and contain dreadful crimes. Like I was saying, this feels very much a crime of the past. Killers who lie in wait. Times move on, but not for murder. That never changes and becomes as chilling, frightening, and sometimes purely random as it was way back then.